Hello everyone and welcome to my second video analysis of Killzone 3. In the first one I have described the basic move controls. In this one I'll elaborate more on that and offer some general advice about how to be competitive online. Enjoy! First of all, sit down and relax. To get good results in any move-compatible shooter, you don't want to aim like you are holding a light gun, because it's tiresome and also unnecessary due to how the move technology works. No, what you want to do is to forget the promotional videos, lay back and keep your hands down. This is very important and also the reason why the upcoming gameplay footage will have my hands shown via traditional picture-in-picture rather than the cooler top-down view. Producing the latter footage would require me to sit like this, so... Anyway, first thing you need to get used to is the obvious fact that you are not holding a traditional controller. Otherwise, you might be tempted to keep your hands close to each other, causing the move to collide with the navigation controller. So keep your hands apart in order to have enough room for maneuver. During the calibration process, when asked to point at the PSI first and the corners of the screen later, you can do so either from your playing stance or by extending your arm. It works fine either way. For reasons I'll explain shortly, don't be paranoid about the accuracy of your aiming and simply point the move where indicated with an about there approach. You can also perform the wall calibration process from any angle as the sphere is constantly tracked by the camera, acting as a pivotal point. Because of this, changing position after calibration doesn't disrupt the tracking either, so you don't need to sit in a given spot all the time. Another important thing to remember about the calibration is to never ever point at the screen when asked to point at the camera. Doing so might initially yield positive results, but because of the way the angle tracking maths work in the background, that is, they assume you have pointed at the camera, simply moving the device around a bit will see the cursor lose vertical alignment, as I'm demonstrating here. If you point at the camera instead, like I've done here, the on-screen cursor won't ever freak out like it did before. About the accuracy thing I mentioned earlier, since the move technology does angle tracking through angular velocity, the alignment with the on-screen cursor is prone to be slightly off, but never to the point of being noticeable unless you aim epic fail style. The cursor sensitivity also affects this, as it basically applies a variable multiplier to whatever angle data the inner maths are processing. Notice here how the cursor seems to drift back and forth as I increase and decrease the sensitivity. That's not actually drifting, that's simply the result of the above mentioned multiplier being changed. Basically, the higher or lower the sensitivity, the more or less exaggerated the outcome of your motions gets, which as an obvious byproduct results in a higher or lower misalignment. If you're fine with doing relatively big movements, you can set the sensitivity between 0 and 20% as I'm doing here. This way the cursor will stay fairly aligned to the move wherever you are pointing it. I personally don't care about alignment and rather prefer to turn my wrist as little as possible, so I have it set to 50%, with camera rotation at 90. By the way, don't take these as suggested settings though, as screen sizes, playing distances and personal tastes are not equal among us. That's just how it works for me. In any case, whatever the setting you settle with, the responsiveness of the on-screen cursor is your biggest friend in battle, allowing to aim at your targets as quickly and smoothly as the following footage hopefully demonstrates. As I have discussed in my previous Killzone 3 video, when shooting with the move, the on-screen cursor trembles quite severely, which back at the time I assumed was a behavior intentionally implemented by the developers to compensate the lack of aim recoil. Well, it turns out that's not really the case. What causes the trembling is actually the result of an untamed sensitivity of the move sensors, which are so sensitive they pick up the vibration produced by the rumble mechanism. Now, while the game doesn't offer an option to turn off the vibration, the cross-media bar does. And here are the consequences. As you can see, the cursor doesn't shake anymore. Of course, it does still pick up small hands movements, but it's clearly more stable. Now, let's find out how this affects accuracy. Let's begin with some full auto shooting. First with the vibration on. And now with the vibration off. Okay, let's see the difference. Because of the quite wide bullet spread, the difference seems negligible, but you can notice the marks left with the vibration off are more condensed around the center of the spread. Let's try this again from about the same distance, but firing at short bursts to minimize the spread naturally caused by prolonged firing. In this case, the difference is definitely more pronounced. Notice how the marks to the left are scattered vertically, just like vertically is how the cursor mostly shakes when vibration is on. Finally, let's check the difference when firing down the sides. Again, just like in the first test, difference in bullet spread produced by continuous fire is mitigated by the inner spread algorithm, but you can see how bullet holes on the right are slightly closer to each other. Overall, while minimal, there is definitely an accuracy issue to be addressed here, especially considering the fact that vibration is triggered by events besides just shooting. The move in fact rumbles whenever you are low on health. You get hit, the ground shakes, and also at every step or jump in the exoskeleton. More on this one later. For your information, all the gameplay footage included in this video was recorded with the vibration on. I just like my move to rumble. Another trick I want to share with you refers to the on-screen cursor. Besides its obvious function as an aiming device, it is also very useful as an enemy spotting one, picking up threats hidden by smoke, darkness, or invisibility. Of course, the crosshairs you get when using a traditional controller behave similarly, but there is a difference. Not just because the cursor is bigger, but also because it doesn't fade away when jumping, sprinting, or reloading. This always-on characteristic of the move cursor, coupled with its natural wandering behavior, allows for an increased probability to detect an enemy. so definitely keep an eye on it at all times.
Capture territory and keep it from the ISA invaders. You must hold out.
Grenade throwing is also easier with the PlayStation Move, as it benefits from the responsiveness and the stickiness of the on-screen cursor, just like the shooting does. Tossing a grenade in the intended direction doesn't require any distracting camera movements. Of course, you still need to take gravity into consideration, but once you get used to it, simply hit L1 and point in the hole with confidence. Well, oddities in collision detection notwithstanding. Moving on to camera management, the first thing you need to realize is that any target in view is a target you can shoot at right away. When one pops up at one side of the screen, don't waste precious time by rotating the camera like you would do with a DualShock 3. Just place the cursor on it and fire. Another thing you want to get used to is circle strafing. You can perform it with the move as nicely as with the DualShock 3, the main difference being the location of the target you are strafing around. It will always end up being at the side of the screen, rather than in the middle. Don't fight this tendency, cause it's futile. Just keep the cursor on him and hold down the trigger. Talking about strafing, don't forget you can follow or intercept moving targets by simply walking whilst keeping the cursor steady. This will minimize chances of unintentional camera movement, which would otherwise force you to reposition the cursor where needed. On a more general note, just use your left thumb as much as you are used to with a traditional controller. Actually, be even more frantic with your strafing, as you have an easier job at keeping the cursor over moving targets. Camera control is generally assumed to be the biggest issue in pointer-based shooters, and that's definitely what needs more practice to get good at. That said, Killzone 3 does a great job at flattening the learning curve. As discussed in my previous video, not only it provides a superior degree of control over camera speed, but it also allows for a quicker halting of its rotation. These two systems combined allow to perform quick turns and stops as fast and precisely as you see me doing here. All you need to do is replace the thinking of having to move and then stop the cursor with the one of simply having to flick your wrist. It works like a charm. What doesn't work as well though is camera rotation when using the jetpack. The basic controls work like this. You hold down the move button to fly and move around with the stick. You can rotate the camera while flying, and holding down L3 triggers sprinting on the ground and brief dashes in the sky. Shooting and zooming are performed as you would expect with the move trigger and L2 respectively. Now, when it comes to camera rotation, we have got a preset dead zone, which is about as wide as the normal one set to 10%. And that's fine. Compared to when using normal weapons though, you can move the on-screen cursor within a much smaller area, the right side of which is indicated here with a red line. And that's less fine. What's worse though is camera control. As you can see here, the turning acceleration is much faster than normal, causing the camera to reach full speed quite abruptly. To get a better understanding of how this differs from your normal camera speed, pay attention to what happens here as I switch from rifle to jetpack while swinging the move left and right to a same degree. In this case, nothing changes because I'm swinging the cursor within a small area, indicated by the red lines, which is about the size of the jetpack dead zone. Now let's increase the swinging and see how the camera reacts upon switching. As you can easily tell, there is quite a severe inconsistency here between the normal camera behavior and the jetpack one. I'm actually spinning around. Now, one could deal with this by adapting on the fly, but sadly the jetpack camera is just so objectively twitchy, no degree of practice seems enough to get used to it.
No, you are out of your mind! You can't fly that thing, it's suicide!
Not that it is totally unplayable, but in the current state it's clearly lacking in smoothness. Luckily, this is not the case with another vehicle you can drive, the exoskeleton. Here, both dead zone and cursor area are smaller than the jetpack ones, but due to the heaviness of the exo, camera rotation is lower and smoother, resulting in a quite more enjoyable experience. Controls-wise, in the exo you can sprint, jump and zoom, just like you can do on foot. The only peculiarity being the ability to fire rockets with the main move button, besides shooting the main gun with the trigger. As you probably know already, scoped aiming in Killzone 3 is based on a detached solution, which allows to freely move the scope or the iron sights around the screen. Just like the jetpack, it comes with a preset dead zone about the size of the biggest dead zone you can set for normal aim. Because of this, to trigger camera rotation you are required to aim closer to the edge of the screen, which then results in a fairly quick camera reaction. So quick indeed, it's not uncommon to lose track of targets located near the dead zone margins, especially if relatively close. To mitigate this inconvenience you have two options. First of all, when dealing with a moving target, be sure you frame it within the scoped dead zone before zooming in. This way you are more likely to bring it down before it reaches the edge of the dead zone. The second advice is to aim at the target with the on-screen cursor first, and then bring the scope when you are ready to shoot. Doing this ensures you won't need to move the camera any further. A third option would be to use the camera lock assist, which takes care of camera movement, but I strongly advise against it because it does more harm than good in most situations. By the way, besides the optional camera lock, the multiplayer mode of Killzone 3 lacks any sort of aim assist, whatever the controller you are using. Okay, now let's switch to the close and personal by analyzing the melee attack. Melee attacks are executed by jabbing the move forward the way you are seeing here. There is no need to make too big of a gesture, and as you can see, motion detection is pretty spot on and consistent. Compared to the DualShock 3 equivalent though, melee execution with the PlayStation Move is affected by a slight delay caused by the different nature of the gesture. We are talking slightly bending a finger versus extending an arm, albeit to a small degree. Despite not being quite scientifically accurate, this side-by-side video comparison hints at a delay of a couple of frames. While you can deftly pull off plenty of melee kills with the move, chances are you will come out as the loser of unfortunately simultaneous close attacks with the DualShock 3 players. Now, as all the move buttons are used for something, the only way I can see Guerrilla bringing some equity to the melee face-offs is by compensation. That is, adding a tiny delay to the DualShock 3 execution. Should be negligible enough to go unnoticed. Okay, now comes a montage of some prolonged gameplay sequences to give you a better understanding of how all I've discussed thus far shapes the move experience. Enjoy!
Aren't gonna give up without a fight. Every man has his limits, so too does a nation. And as the nation
Alright, as you can hopefully tell from what you have just seen as well as from the scoreboards shown here, there is nothing to suggest the move controls can negatively affect your performance online. More importantly though, there is a lot to gain from the move controls in terms of pure fun factor. I hope you give it a serious try and don't dismiss it as some sort of a crippling casual thing. It's actually pretty hardcore to be good with it. And this is it. Thanks for watching, ci vediamo online!